AT&T for the contract price of $200. It's a Windows Phone 7 device, and the unique thing about it is that it sports a landscape sliding keyboard. The Quantum is in fact the only Windows Phone 7 device from the onset to sport the landscape sliding form factor. Its design is pretty decent, not the most striking out there, but it works for this device. You have the soft touch coating material all around the sides, and it complements well with the metallic back cover. It gives you that sense of durability. As far as size though, it's a little bit on the bulkier side, and it's also rather heavy, so you definitely notice it in your pockets. We're fairly content with the detailed-looking display of the Quantum. It measures in at 3.5 inches, WVGA resolution, so that's 480 by 800 pixels, and similar to other Windows Phone 7 devices we checked out thus far. With text legibility, you're not going to have a problem just because of the fantastic resolution, so it's going to produce some sharp-looking text. On top of that, colors have a natural look to them, so it's not going to fade out or lose visibility thanks to the great viewing angles. And as far as responsiveness, it's pretty good for this device. Beneath the touchscreen, you have the touch-sensitive buttons. You only have the back and search, while the start or home key is a physical button. It's a little bit difficult to make out just because it's recessed. While on the right side, you simply have the volume rocker, which is difficult to make out just because it's flush to the surface. And you also have the dedicated 2-level shutter key. On top, you simply have the 3.5mm headset jack and the dedicated power button, which is rather difficult to make out just because it's flush to the surface. In the rear, you have the 5-megapixel autofocus camera with LED flash. You have the speakerphone grill here, and when you remove the back cover, it gives you access to the battery and a SIM card slot. We definitely like the snappy opening and closing mechanism of the handset. Now, even though buttons are flush to the surface, they're large enough in size, and they offer a really good distinctive feel when you press that down on them. That speed typing is not going to be too much of a concern. We also like the addition of the directional pad here. Our only problem is found on the left-hand side where the shift and function buttons are. They're very difficult to make out with your fingers, and we would just like to see them placed on the actual keyboard as opposed to being on the side. But aside from that, it's a good experience for this handset. Just like other Windows Phone 7 devices we checked out, the Quantum is powered by a 1 GHz processor, so moving about the platform is very swift with barely any evidence of any lag or slowdown. As you can tell, it's very fluid, and that's the consistent theme that we see with Windows Phone 7 as a whole. At the home screen, you have the live tiles, which aggregates a bunch of different information, from status messages from Facebook to even profile pictures, so it's going to have an animated look to it. Now, the only inconsistent experience we see on the Quantum is the fact that it can't be used, it's not optimized to be used in landscape mode. So right now we have it in portrait, but if you open up the handset to expose its keyboard, the home screen is not going to change to a landscape orientation, so you're going to be stuck with using what you have here. Now, there are some applications that take advantage of it, like the Bing search. As you can tell, if you open up the handset to expose its keyboard, it'll automatically adjust, but for the most part, it doesn't do it on all programs. The messaging experience is very good thanks to the great Windows Phone 7 keyboard. It's very responsive, and if you tilt it to landscape, you're going to have a little bit more room to use it. But of course, the best experience is using the physical keyboard. Even though it might not offer flash support like some Android phones, the web browsing experience should be more than acceptable for anyone out there. It'll load up our page here very quick, and as you can tell, it renders it properly. You can double tap to zoom in or do multi-touch gestures to zoom in and zoom out, and it's very responsive to the touch, as you can tell, and scrolling is very smooth. With its 5-megapixel autofocus camera, the LG Quantum produces some average-looking shots. In outdoor conditions with great lighting, there's a decent amount of detail, but colors have a deeper tone to them. Indoors, though, the color reproduction is very off, and the flash, though, unfortunately, doesn't illuminate the shot that well. Naturally, we find 720p video recording with the Quantum. Now, the only thing you're going to have to worry about is just fighting the exposure, just because it has a tendency to go from one extreme to the other very quickly. Details average, not the best looking. There is some artifacting that's evident with the shots, and the frame rate's pretty decent enough for most people to tolerate, but the audio recording is a little bit on the crackly side. Video playback's no concern with the Quantum. We have one here encoded in DivX, 1280 by 720 resolution, as you could tell. There's a lot of detail, no evidence of any lag or slowdown, so the experience is going to be pretty good for anyone out there. Calling quality is average at best with the Quantum, just because with the earpiece there's a noticeable amount of static that can be heard in the background, and it's most evident when it's placed on the loudest volume setting. Voices have a mute tone to them as well, but on the flip side, our callers did say our voice have a natural tone to them. When we used the speakerphone, however, it made voices sound extremely muffled. The handset fares well in retaining solid connection to the network, and we didn't experience any dropped calls during our testing. Battery life with the LG Quantum is average too, just because for normal users out there, you'll get an easily 8-hour work shift without any problems, but for heavy users, you'll constantly be required to charge it. Light users should get close to a full day's worth of usage, but you'll want to constantly recharge it every night. Now, if we're in for a Windows Phone 7, the LG Quantum wouldn't have its general appeal with it. Granted, though, it is the only device right now to sport a landscape keyboard, and it's priced similarly to all the other handsets out there at $200. But there are some inconsistencies, especially with the platform experience on its orientation when you open it up to use the keyboard. Hopefully down the road it will be addressed in future updates, but for right now it's a little bit of a hindrance opening up the keyboard and not being able to use it in landscape.